Zerg player. In this Team Liquid showdown, it is Elazer.
The bottom right is the red Terran for Team Liquid. It is Clem. Where's my zooms, observer?
Yeah, I got something in my eyes. I was like trying to like rub my eye while also like moving the mouse around and changing the scene and stuff. I was like, okay. I was like, you know, as gonna say, I was like, it's fine, she won't mention it, but no, straight away. First time I don't do it all season, and you're just like, boom, what's going on?
It just felt so weird. I had to like triple check if I was watching.
You know what it is? That's what I thought as well. Because I was also slow to swap off of Elazer, and I was like, she's gonna think that she's not on the right camera.
Exactly.
We're just usually so in sync. That's all it is.
Sometimes there's been some missed moments in the observing, where he's observing, producing, casting, talking to the admins, all that good stuff. And someone might have noticed, right? But I think what they really noticed is the lack of zoomies, the zoomy twisties for the observer, for the intros.
Just the intros.
Just the intros.
Out of everything, that's what was noticed. Yeah.
Exactly. It's as soon as you don't do it, it just feels like you're missing part of home. Where's my twisty zoomy?
I wish I'd been a good enough observer that was the only thing they noticed.
Yeah. That's tough. Tough job. Everyone should give Wardy a round of applause.
That's
doing all this work. I'm just talking. I don't even do anything. My hand's off the keyboard.
I do envy you a little bit. Usually it's really nice working these days where we just kind of pop the observer cam on and we just talk. But I'm actually very impressed with myself because when I stream on my own stream, I'm quite lazy nowadays because I really do like steal people's cameras a lot. Like if they're observing, may as well use their camera and I'll just, do my own thing. Apparently I forgot to turn game sounds on as well, so that's the thing this game. So usually I don't observe too much on my own channel because like someone else is doing it, and then if I watch their camera, I actually notice more in general, so that it makes for a better experience. And not once during the last 3 weeks have I done that here. I have been attempting to be the best observer I can be, so little self pat on the back. I didn't cheat out at all.
Yeah, you deserve it. It's going to be a 3cc build for Clem, so if you thought we were missing anything important, we really weren't.
Oh.
Clem 3cc build, kind of his go-to. He believes in his ability to scout, so while it might seem a little dangerous against a guy known for his aggression, realistically, if your scouting is perfect, which, that's difficult to do, you don't really have anything to worry about. But, that there is that option. If Elazer consistently sees 3cc's from Clem, he'll try to punish it eventually.
Yes, if you do it every single game, I'd be surprised if Elazer doesn't come out with at least one game in this series of being like, straight up just all in aggression, even just blind, because I think that's just kind of what you gotta do. You gotta keep Clem honest, otherwise if you let him run the game and do what he wants every single time, I do think you end up in a bad place. Grenade will not be good enough to save this Reaper, as the links came in from an odd direction, and kind of caught Clem a little off guard, so Reaper does go down. Our first couple of Hellions need to be careful, a little bit desynced from each other, and see what they do. There's too many links to go diving in. That's one thing he did a lot against Wayne, trying to dive the Hellions into mineral lines, and oftentimes did not work out well.
All right, maybe being a little less eager to do that now in a fresh best of 5 TVZ. It is going to be Hellion Banshee, so again, if this even was going to be something aggressive, theoretically Clem could defend it with enough losses to to be difficult to play out the game, but play out the game. But again, Elazer not going to be aggressive whatsoever. Elazer, he talked a lot about his recent history, how he hasn't really been putting in as much work. He's kind of taken a step back from StarCraft. And that does seem to be working out okay for him so far. We know that is an effect. People just chillax a little bit. But it's interesting looking at his victories in the Swiss group, because I think he said ZVP was his weakest, his least strong. That's what I was going for. And he dominated all the Protoss. And then he gets kind of fortunate, I would say, in the round of 16, getting Bly, who I think he would feel very confident against with his playstyle and the matchup that it is. Now, it is the mechanical, demanding matchup against the best player, one of the best players in the world with it. Elazer should really be considering himself the underdog you would think.
Mm-hmm.
But he's not necessarily doing anything to show that. He looks as confident as ever in ZVT.
Yeah, no, that's such a that's very true. He sets up here very standard as well. As, you know, he's deflecting the Hellions very nicely. He's not left any openings early in this game. Spore Crawlers are going to be set up too. He knows about Banshees. There's going to be a moment here where these Queens take some damage, and Clem just finds them out the front, so can push those back, but they're not really in any danger. They have transfusions. They can run away. They are on creep. Now maybe the Hellions can actually get an access point because these Queens have been pushed back, so they're going to go dive the natural. There's only 2 Queens there. The Lings will run in, but it is a chase. So these Hellions have the chance to get a couple of drones early, and they get one on the natural. Up into the main base we go. We do not get any form of a wall off, and this has just been, well, in the end, disastrous. 6 workers. It's not truly disastrous yet. 7 workers feels okay still for every single Hellion in the game.
Counterattack might be fruitful for Elazer. That's a lot of Lings left over. And Clem just got rid of the most reliable early game unit to defend against Lings.
Mm-hmm.
There would have been a potential to get some of the SCVs, but Elazer did not immediately go across the map, and now Clem has that bunched up army in the 3rd base, so maybe a slight opportunity missed. But that means the Hellions were a worthwhile sacrifice. If they weren't necessary to defend the 3rd base, then you don't really need them as the game goes on. Yeah, they can add in as Hellbats later on, but that, you know, doesn't usually... It's not usually something that Terran's really relying on, is those Hellbats.
Clem's like, man, at the moment these Banshees about to die, it's like, actually I'll just cloak them up and get a few more shots off, and now you realize the Overseer's coming too, so just making the absolute most of it. Elazer clutching the Queens and keeping them alive. But cool little move from Clem, who kind of kept the Queens there with the Banshees and then got the Marines to jump on top of them. Fun little moment between the two, as we do have Elazer heading just kind of dive bombing really straight towards Hydrodent. Doesn't really delay at all, sets up straight to that. Clem with just a single engineering bay upgrade on the way, by the way, so that's a little bit of a nasty... Well, he's actually only got +1 armor, my bad. So he's actually only got 1 because he forgot +1 attack earlier. I see.
No, he's playing a little off, isn't he? Once again, just a little, you know, small details, but big if the players really are evenly matched. Those mistakes could be big. So I think his combat shields was also late, right? But certainly that +1 attack is. Now his armory is done, so yeah, you might as well just start up the upgrade that you can, even though it's not the preference. You want to get that attack ASAP. But it is what it is. The game will definitely be going on into a macro game. Clem kind of setting the pacing for that, going into a 4th base, double factory setup. Actually getting +1 armor? Oh, he has moved over into Widow Mines, so that does make more sense. I thought he was still producing tanks.
Yeah, I'm just going to switch into... I mean, he did go 4 tanks, which is like, I'd say maybe more than usual if you're going to switch to mines, but yeah, 4 tanks now into Widow Mines. Yeah, vehicle plane obviously goes a long way to that because... You know, you don't benefit from the attack upgrade because the Widow Mine attacks just don't do that. Otherwise, they'd be even more insane. So yeah, the plating does help instead. And yeah, we just have ourselves a couple different attacks on the map currently. Marines here, Marines there. Elazer kind of dealing with both groups of those units pretty well. The Banshee's being kept alive early. I mean, they very nearly died, and instead, they actually get to clean up a few units now as we also hit on the right-hand side. But these Banes go down with only 3 SCVs killed. Good defense across the board from Clem.
And a real powerful defense in the context of the entire game. Elazer apparently really wanted to find damage with that because nothing else has really been developed back at home. Like, he was late to starting his upgrades. It was after that push was pushed back that he started his upgrades. He's definitely not moving on to a hive, no infestation pit. So with the first aggressive attack not working out in such a easy fashion, Clem really did just kind of brush it off. I have less belief that further mid-game aggression from Elazer will work out. Is still a chance, of course, but I do think Clem might have also just picked up on how Elazer is going to play out this portion of the game. So even though he hasn't scanned the main base, and even though he is getting a Ghost Academy, would have mine reached.
Yeah.
He's probably just going to make sure that he defends mostly, right? It is Elazer after all. You could guess kind of how he would play out his EVT.
Yeah, Elazer's an aggressive player. That mine just goes down before it comes back off cooldown. But yes, you're correct. The Elazer really does just like to be the aggressor, and if you're just kind of doing this as Clem, right, you're kind of playing one side, then the other, little drops, nothing overly committed, you're just going to basically force a larger, defense and then a longer game overall. I think Clem's going to be very happy with this sort of situation, and if that's his plan, I'm 100% down for it, because Elazer can play later game, but his strength is absolutely more mid-game focused. He's always been a more mid-game kind of Zerg. He isn't kind of like the Serral who's always bidding for the late game every single time, so Yes, if this is what Clem's plan is, I love it. And honestly, he's setting himself up brilliantly. Extra CC's coming down. And yeah, it's not being super active. Yeah, the map's covered in creep and the space is coming in. But Clem's just so confident in this later stage of game that he can absolutely get away with this. Beautiful splitting against his own Widowmine there. And gets another good trade. Knocks down a killer as well to supply block the Elazer a little bit, even though he's maxed out.
Yeah, right. Upgrades will finish up here for both players, actually. But Clem, with you, just feels like he's in a really good position. Is going to get a little caught off guard here, but he could always pick up. The Hydra is not quite capable of chasing down all those medevacs, or you would think. A little close. That does mean that there's a large portion of the Terran army and medevacs unloading one by one, so now's the time to attack that planetary. The tank gets destroyed. The SCVs try to go for the repair, but obviously Banelings are right there to help out, and the Marines don't find a much better place to micro. Unloaded into that corner pocket as they were, so this finally a success for Elazer, but is it a big enough success? Clem had 4 extra command centers on the way at one point.
Yeah, 30 SCV seems like a big loss, and it is, don't get me wrong, but it is the game where Clem can, potentially recover. His army supply is still good, so he has a little bit of time to recover. This doesn't have to be like an immediate counterattack or anything. He shouldn't die to a follow-up wave of units. He should just be fine to reset a CC, and he has the CC to reset with a few ghosts now to help out with some extra snipes, and especially Elazer kind of hanging around here. He's just lost a few more units, a lot of Lings, a few Hydras, and I mean, he's got some money to spend, but he doesn't have a lot of gas to spend, ZG. And right now, I think, okay, he's got 10 lava available. I'm just wondering, because he's obviously not quite spent all of his money just yet, but it is mostly minerals left over, and even a Banshee still from the early game, finding a couple of drones and just picking out the hatchery for a few more moments, as well as just finding everything possible as Clem for the moment.
That was a good opportunity, but I do not believe it was enough. And it only existed because Clem was overly aggressive. That momentum was obvious to pick up on because the medevacs picked up. So, Elazer did what he should have, certainly. But for only one engagement in the game, that's not going to be enough. Not when Clem had gotten away with so much previously. And now the ghosts are going to ensure that there's going to be a real punish anytime Elazer overextends, which is now the real, I think, concern. Because, yeah, Elazer still on that mid-game technology is all about the attack. And it's like one bright, hopeful opportunity doesn't win you the game. You're going to need multiple opportunities, which I just don't think Clem is going to give again. I could be wrong, though. He could get overeager. He could get overconfident.
No, that's very true. I mean, the problem is we're just still on lair tech, right, from Elazer, and the longer he sits on lair tech, essentially the better the Clem's trades continue to be. With ghosts out and tank count coming back online, it just doesn't feel like Elazer has the tools necessary to keep on taking trades. Resources lost so far, already about 5,000 words off for him. And the thing is now as well, Clem got a real kind of carve and a creep up this right side, so you can actually get to this top base very easily. And if he can stop this base from being online, Elazer genuinely will have trouble mining throughout this game unless he can start taking a lot more of the bottom left, but his creep isn't really set up too much over there. It's just reasons to be worried for Elazer. You can just see Clem fighting back off creep, happy to take fights in this sort of situation because that should be the best kind of fights he can get.
Standing against the attempted run-bys, by the looks of it. Now, if Elazer could continue expanding, which is going to be difficult, the map's kind of getting small at this point, and denying Clem's potential 5th, I would still believe in the idea of Clem messing up. But of course, if Clem gets a 5th, Elazer gets stuck on his original 6 bases. Give it a couple of more minutes, and he will not have the resources to remax. As we know, Zerg needs more resources for their worst trades. But we're not quite there yet, so that's just something to keep in mind for the future. Once again, Elazer forcing the pickup, and it's deja vu at this point. But a little more maybe here to defend, some more Marauders to soak up the Baneling shots, kind of. They still destroy all the SCVs and will destroy the planetary yet again. So Clem, his aggression is actually hurting him. This is the second opportunity for Elazer. Well, at least this drop's doing well.
Yeah, that drop's going to do okay, but I mean, this was a lot of damage taken, and yeah, Clem just... It was the exact same thing. You're forced to lift up, drop your Marines in a terrible place, and so you can't really take the fight you want to be taking, and yeah, Elazer just gets a good jump, gets a lot done all at once. The counter drop at least is nice. You knock down a hatchery, kill a few drones. It's a bit of a bounce back. We do have another CC to replace, but of course, every time you replace in a 4th base, it's a 5th base that could have been instead, right? So it is slowing you down a lot as Clem. This is definitely problematic, and it keeps Elazer in a very good fighting position in this game, and it's the second time now where I've really started to believe that Clem kind of has this, fairly under control and, heading in a good direction. Only for basically the exact same fight to undo everything I believed in there. So, Yeah, this time Clem's struggling to get back on his feet as well. 47 SCVs, not rebuilding as quickly as I would have liked maybe, so yeah, getting a little bit nasty.
You put it in such a great way. It just, we really had the expectation here for Clem, and that attack just completely undermined it. You know, there's a serious problem with Clem, Clem's composition. He's actually very light on the factory production. So, you know, not only are the Widow Mines maybe not, like, I would love Widow Mines and tanks very focused on, right? So he's got 6 tanks and 6 Widow Mines pushing with this Bioforce. And then I think Elazer would have had a lot more trouble. But he's actually not had a whole lot of splash to help out against Elazer's overwhelming army supply, just with Zerg being, you know, Zerg, I suppose, the overwhelming nature of their composition. And that has, I mean, that's led to this. That's helped lead to this, alongside Clem just being so over-aggressive that the only option is to pick up. He's never really been able to run away. So, I mean, Elazer staying on this mid-game aggression is gonna work in this game. And I want to give kudos to Elazer, but I can't help but just kind of shake my head a little bit at Clem. Doesn't seem like he's playing on point.
Yes, no, just little mistakes that I feel like Clem evolved, and in this matchup especially where he's so comfortable and so confident, maybe wouldn't be making. Now, the game is still on. You know, we have got a rebuild of SCVs. We're resetting up to not just 4, but actually a 5th base. It's only an orbital on the bottom side. But Clem also has some good intentions to go focus on the bottom left a bit more now, because this bottom left base up from Elazer as well. So if you can push in this direction off of this orbital and protect the orbital while you push, a lot of opportunity there. Of course, you're going to have to deal with counterattacks on the right side, but at least that is a planetary, couple of mines set up to maybe help with that. So I can see the ideas of what Clem is doing, and if he can survive on these 5 bases for a while, he should still be okay. 6k resource lost favor for him. We'll see what happens as it is Elazer already launching an attack on the right. First Widow Mine shot does not go off. The second one will. Looks as though this planetary is just going to be forfeit. Clem is very Nelly, walking over some bailing mines. He did walk over them, they just didn't blow up. And now he's going to get a scan on the right side at least, as he tries to push this back, but like I say, already gave up the base.
This is... I mean, I still think that they both have a problem, right? Clem can't really remax fast enough, but Elazer is still on a composition that if Clem perfects his, if he gets, let's say, 6 ghosts, because the snipes are helping to punish, especially the Hydras as they retreat, a decent amount of splash units in the form of tanks and Widow Mines, and however much bio fits in afterwards, that army is supposed to be better, especially defensively set up. You know, some SimCity to help you out. So Elazer, you know, a Zerg player is not supposed to play out a 20-minute game against a defensive Terran with only mid-game, unless the Terran over-aggresses and messes up the army fights, which has been happening. But if Clem finally gets everything settled, kind of does that very slow, very intimidating push with like a very high tank count, then Elazer's going to be in trouble without Vipers or Infestors or whatever else you could get, right? So that still is an option. But this game is closer than I think we were all expecting. Oh, that was a brilliant one-on-one shot. And this time around, it looks like that 4th base is going to be saved. Even though it's not a planetary, the army is just there.
A lot going on both sides, really. I mean, obviously, there's a Widow Mine on the top right that looked as though it was pretty big. On the bottom left, Clem only got hit by one of the Burrowed Banes, so his army kind of survived for a little while too, longer than it maybe should have done. If he knows those Burrowed Banes were there, he might be able to scan for them, but he has not noticed that yet. His scan is quite far forward, so his bottom left side may finally get punished. There we go, the Burrowed Bane's going off, and there's still 2 left over, so Elazer, he always burrows more than just a couple, and starting to pay off for him over there. Obviously, supplies are closing in on maxed out from both sides. Elazer's getting a bit of a bank. Most importantly, Elazer's getting a hive up, so more tech available. We are going to take a fight over in this direction. A couple of Widow Mines this time getting to kind of come into play very quickly. Clem's going to have to lift and leave with the rest of these units, though, and he will be able to get out of reach of the Hydras. But we're going to see this again where he has to drop in that same corner. No, he's going to give up the base instead.
Lift. It's the benefit of it being an orbital. The planetary would have died. So he saves all the SCVs as well. Clem holding on to the supply is a big difference from the last 2 times we've seen this section of the map under siege. And now I'm once again a believer in Clem's army. But Elazer choosing, I think, a good time to move on in this game, get that hive technology, possibly... Actually, I'm not sure what he's going to prioritize, because, you know, we do not have a high tank count. But Liberator's coming out, so probably still a couple of Vipers, right? Those are always going to be helpful. But you don't necessarily go into Ultra Broodlord, do you, against someone who does have Ghosts? You get the
Yeah.
Hive technology to get your upgrades, and then also hopefully still have this overwhelming economic lead to continue throwing bodies at your opponent. So, just looking at the upgrades, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of fungals might not go amiss as the ghost count is rising up a little bit more. That Widow Mine was waiting, and it does get it to go off. It took a little bit too long to kill here. And a couple more defensive mines. Banes are just kind of single filing up a ramp, which generally isn't a good thing. Widow Mines are surviving some of the Baneling connections too with +3 plating, so it's actually making a big difference. Just mines that survive low HP will get to fire again in the future. And again, just the last few trades have not been as hot for Elazer. They've been a little bit more expensive. It was 6,000 resource loss difference last time I brought it up. Felt like that was 2 minutes ago. It's now 12,000. So the last few moments have been extremely expensive and puts Clem in a much better spot. Even though he's not been mining a lot, he's finding the efficiency to stay in the game for the moment.
Yes, indeed. Lazer's only Hive upgrade is going to be the adrenal glands. So that might open opportunities for Lings, but as far as setting up for the late game, that is still something that Elazer has missed out on by emphasizing the layer so much. So it's not even about, like I said, necessarily the Hive technology, Ultras and Broodlords. You don't really want to go into them if your opponent already has Ghosts. It's the upgrades. It's also having, I think, Nidus Worms ready to go and Lurkers to threaten in those Nidus Worms. Those are things that you would want to have if you really are tackling a late game Turtle Terran, but Elazer's just like, make the units, find the opportunities, and capitalize on them. Once again, sending Clem back home, forcing the drop out units on his own high ground. Elazer, I mean, I feel like we're kind of keep expecting Elazer to finally get punished for this, and he never does. And Clem maybe also is in that same position where he's like, wait a second. How is this Zerg versus Terran not gone the way that every other Zerg versus Terran has? Why is this happening to me? So he's always struggling. It's like the pacing of the game is just so that little bit different that Clem having trouble. He's lost his entire right side.
Yes, multiple times over, just having a bad time over here, and right side's definitely been the weaker side. He's just needs a scan so he can drop the left side base over here would be nice just to get that properly mining. As at this stage, the only problem is if you focus in the bottom left as Clem, your main base is really vulnerable to attack, and that's where all of your production sits, right? So it's very difficult to just be like, oh yeah, just going to focus in the bottom left now, because yeah, you probably have to, but your right side Bane just so open, so punishable. And Elazer just making it happen on such low-tech units this entire time. Like, you know, he was on left for so long, it just, like you said, you expected him to kind of get punished. You expected it to not go well. At some stage, there was going to be a turn where it's just like, okay, this time, Elazer really lost a bit too much. He doesn't have the tech. Clem's army got set up, but that never happened. And Elazer's just been taking fights like this the entire time. He's going to jump on this over here. Clem has a lot of units out to the right side, so it's going to be a lot of dead SCVs. And Elazer can just back away from this. Doesn't need to take the army fight. 36 workers going down. Huge, as now the Biosim's down the ramp to try and chase, but yeah, even with a few kills on the chase, it's not good enough for Clem at all. This was very expensive. GG's.
Yeah. That overall was, I would say, oddly paced. All right, just to paint the picture of a more typical TVZ with a setup like that. You know, imagine Cero versus Clem, I suppose. 3CC versus Zerg doing their macro stuff. The Zerg player decides to go Ling, Bane, Ling, Hydra. Okay, fair enough. They emphasize some aggression in the mid game, and the Terran player figures that out. Plays defensively, gets SimCity, plays into the long game. So the Zerg player does it, but making sure to get, 85 drones on 6 bases behind it, getting the Hive so they can get some abducts going with the Vipers, trying to smoothly transition as they realize it is going to that longer stage of that game. They set up those Nidus Worms to try and go for the run-bys, because presumably going for a direct attack is not going to get you very far often enough. You got to split, you got to harass, you got to distract, you got to get some spellcasters in there. And Elazer basically said, well, the key element to everything you just said is that you still have an overwhelming army, right? Like Ling, Bane, Ling, Hydra. Do I really need the Vipers? And I guess he proved to us he didn't.
Yeah.
But I do think that is not always going to win Elazer games, and that Clem at his absolute best would usually do well against that pace. It's just something about it really offset Clem, who was also kind of clearly warming up anyways with those missed upgrades. So this could very well be like that Clem Wayne series, where it takes him a while to finally look like the, ultimate TDZ destroyer Clem.
I think what baffles me about the game is it really felt like Clem was so happy to play the slow game and just be like, okay, I'm not going to attack. He realized that it was maybe just lay attack and he just sat back. And then he was like, nah, I'm kind of bored of this. Let's go. And it was like, it's like the worst time to possibly go. Like, his army just didn't quite get good enough. You've let the Zerg do as they wish for a long time. There was creep all over. And you just did get overly aggressive in a moment where you couldn't really afford to. And like, he was just doing such a good job of just being very passive, but active enough with, like, a drop here and a drop there. And then just went a little bit too heavy on that right side. A couple times over, same mistake repeated, really left Elazer in a position where that kind of style was viable. Because a lot of the time, that sort of style kind of isn't meant to be viable, right? Bottom left side, High Red Terran player from Team Liquid is Clem. Up down 1-0 at the start of this game. I swapped the players around when we started and we left the score up, so my bad.
Yeah, gotcha. In the top right, actually up 1-0, it is Elazer. Yeah, it's homies.
Brought him back just for you.
So yeah. It's just such a weird, because I don't even feel like we're really doing justice to how just unsettling the game was, you know? It just didn't feel right. Make it feel okay. As far as Elazer, I don't have any other expectations for him. I know that he does stay on that mid-game aggression. I think he does look to capitalize on a Terran player who's not quite reading it correctly. The one who's like, wait, maybe I should push, maybe I shouldn't push. I just really gave a lot of credit to Clem to not make that mistake more than once, and then he made that mistake more than once. Additionally, I do think he made a big mistake by not continuing to pump out tanks. I really think if he had just continued pumping a tank out from that tech lab factory and Widow Mines, maybe he would have gotten up to a count of like 6 or 7. Now, usually they put 2 back at home to help defend, so okay, that's fair. But it's 4 to 6 tanks with that push on the right side when the Zerg player doesn't have Vipers. Like, that helps, right? I'm not crazy. Tanks don't totally lose value offensively if you go into a late game. Now, sometimes it feels like they do, but that's usually when Vipers appear. Otherwise, they are that anchor to a push that makes the Zerg player rethink how they engage.
No, I think you're definitely right, where it's also just going like 4 tanks as well. It's like that's sort of in between where that's like usually you go like 2, maybe 3 cut. He went 4, so then the Widow Mines went almost super fast. But yeah, I think if you just keep building tanks and you hold the position, especially because the way he was setting up with tanks as well would have been great. And the way that Elazer pushed into positions, tanks would have been amazing. And yes, eventually maybe you want mines instead of tanks because of the Vipers, but again, it felt as though Clem knew that Elazer was being as aggressive as he was being, and hence it was kind of fine to keep building tanks. And it was just like Clem switched the kind of game he was playing at a very weird point when he got up to 3.5 bases, and he was just like, oh, let's switch from playing nice macro and defensive because my opponent's trying to be very aggressive with his army comp to actually just being a bit more aggressive myself, right? So
yeah, and not taking the appropriate steps to make it a viable attack too. I think is kind of the additional part of it. It's like, well, maybe you don't attack at all is actually the better option, but if you do, you know you're supposed to be really careful. You got to kind of envision this perfect setup for a Terran player, and when I envision it, I do certainly think of tanks, or at least way more Widow Mines. Because there was like one point where the Widow Mine count seemed to be that very intimidating amount. Let's say 5 or 6, so half of them would get good shots. And then there was some serious lack of Widow Mines. They were placed around too many places. They weren't being built consistently. Honestly, a lot of things pointed to Clem, seriously, warming up, guys. He was a little late to arriving. It's very possible he's not warmed up. So the upgrades are off, the production's off, the kind of fog brain that happens when you just get into StarCraft. So you're like, oh, of course I shouldn't have done this, or I should have done that. You know, you got to get it all out of your system in the first couple of games and hope that it still kicks in eventually to win the overall best of 5. But if Elazer was looking for some confidence, he certainly got it. He played a macro game, basically, right, against Clem, and he won it.
And now he gets his own map pick, right? Babylon Terran map.
Yeah.
Ancient Systems Zerg map. That doesn't define who's going to win, but it definitely should give Elazer a bit more confidence, because if he can carve his first map pick of the series into a win, then you're on a 2-0 lead. And then you can get a bit crazy, a bit wild, and you only need one thing to stick to win the series out. So, yeah, I think Elazer should be full of confidence, as you say. It's a perfect way to start, win a good long game on your opponent's map pick. Yeah, maybe he wasn't the most macro focused because it was kind of still very mid-game aggression, but 25 minutes, you can't deny, has that macro element to it.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I said kind of. It was just so much mid-game from Elazer. But we do have Clem going into a less safe 3cc build. He did not go for Banshees this time, but that's a good thing because he doesn't really need them. The Banshees were actually very helpful in the last game. I think we both were pretty on board the Clem train for the first 7 minutes when he denied those first 2 attacks. I was very much on board because of that. So the Banshees helped in that regard, but overall, I'd say for a guy like Clem, who does usually have the most fun and the most success hitting fast and hard, skipping those Banshees just to get yourself set up faster into Bio 3cc, I think is a better option. The downside is if Elazer does win this game, and as you said, has the freedom to then do whatever the heck he wants, he could go into an all-in in the future, but those Hellions tried to dive, and that was not a worthwhile dive.
That was absolutely not. The Hellions, they get a lot of lings at the very least and continue to fight for a lot more lings at the very end, and some very good positioning against every single Zergling, but yeah, I mean, you've just lost your Hellions. That's your map control at this point in the game. That's so much of what you're meant to have for the future here. And now Elazer has good freedom. Creep spread should be able to pop off on a map that's already sizable. Now the creep's going to make these bases almost untouchable if Elazer plays this properly. So I hate the Hellions going down here. Clem started one upgrade before the other again. It's just not clean. StarCraft 2 from Clem. Almost desperate, actually, some of the moves.
Yeah, I would agree. Well, you know, confident people who end up making mistakes can sometimes, I think, look like that. Like, you know, where it's just, I think Clem has been rewarded so often with his very clean games and very on-point games by doing those things, you know, trying to dive with the Hellion, trying to be overly aggressive, that when it's not super clean and it's not really perfect for him, it looks like desperate. It looks like, well, you don't have to do that, you know that, right? And it's not more like I think I have to. It's like, well, I thought I could get away with it. Like, oh, it's like, no, Clem, maybe don't try to get away with it. But anyways, those Hellions going down did not once again bother Clem's third, which is one of the more important things. I would also say one of the more important things about that Hellion drive-by was that Elazer didn't even really get quickly into remaking his lings, so he really benefited from tearing them down like he did.
Yeah.
Because there's that Zerg reaction where like, oh no, I lost all my lings, but he was just making drones, even as his lings all died.
Yeah, he really was. He's got so much money, by the way. If he had the love to spend it all, his supply would be looking a lot healthier. As it stands, you might look at this and be like, oh, Clem's actually not doing so bad, right? But it really is just kind of a case of Elazer is, just Elazer's basically just kind of not spending the money properly. And if you can spend it properly, it'd be a lot scarier. Clem would be a lot less scary. The thing is, what Clem's doing is, you know, taking out some very minor creep teamers, some very minor trades. As he splits his army in 2 different parts, it's definitely not a bad route to take at the moment, but he needs to start getting some of this creep spread properly, because otherwise this map is going to be all zerged up.
That's for certain. Does find some victories with the drops. It's nothing super overwhelming. Elazer certainly not going to be punished for a little bit of bank that he's building. That should be fixed once he can build Hydras. A little more expensive. I was going to bring something else up. Oh, Clem, once again, going for an odd number of tanks. As you were pointing out, it's kind of like 2 is the defensive setup. And for Clem, a lot of the time, he even wants to skip tanks if he thinks he can, because tanks would be necessary against someone going roaches, but if he knows for a fact someone's going to play Ling Baneling, he often goes right into Widow Mines. So it's just kind of funny seeing him go into 3 tanks, not just 2, not 4 this time though either, and yeah, now the Widow Mines are on the way.
Very similar game, no? Just, you know, Hellion's dead early. We've got tanks into the Widow Mine swap. Clem's kind of playing these little drops around the map. You just come with a few Widow Mines on this left-hand side now, so a bit more of a serious push out. And Elazer's just kind of playing into Ling, Bane, Hydra, or Flare Tech currently, and not advancing further than that. So we get a bit of a rematch in terms of how it's going to play, and we'll see if there's any adjustments made. We'll see if there's any differences. Clem, like I say, I feel like this is fine. If your opponent's just playing Ling, Bane, Hydra, there's no tech up in toward Hive. Little moves like this, little drops like this. I mean, this is obviously a bit of a larger drop, and that Widow Mine does get a good shot off as well. These moves are absolutely great. These moves are fine. It's just don't suddenly then move out with everything onto creep, get pushed back, and start losing bases because of it, because that's just the last thing you need to happen. You get your extra CCs up, you get Ghost Academy going, and this game should continue to go pretty well for you as Clem. He's undoing a lot of, you know, the negatives I felt there were due to losing those Hellions early.
Say, as far as pointing out what Elazer's doing right, again, like droning after losing the Lings first, because he knows he wasn't going to be under pressure, then making them Army. Army was quite good. Finally getting for those Hydras, prioritizing the mid game, which I think he is the strongest at. I think it's also worth noting that he is running after these drops. He's not just saying, oh, thank God I'm okay, and letting the drops unload very close to his creep. He is trying to chase after it, and that is part of what caused the snowball of the last game, which is, I think that Clem kind of expected the Zerg not to go off creep, so that when they did, all he could do was panic, pick up, and run away. So something to think about strategically, I suppose, that Elazer might, not just be looking for a free victory, but looking to literally start that momentum. This time, Clem a little bit better about making sure that doesn't open up that opportunity. I think the map being different is also playing a part. He doesn't lift and leave and then lose a base because of it. He's mostly still safe at home.
No, absolutely. There's a couple of Widowmine shots going off here and there, just coating this Zerg army. There's been some great Widowmines this game in general, and Elazer had been taking some pretty rough fights up until this point. We always expected Terran to trade well, but it'd been exceptionally well. The last fight or so was a bit better for Elazer, and obviously he is maxed out. He's still, again, very much still committed to lair tech, no infestation pits. Clem's still just moving out with portions of the army he can always lift up and evacuate via the medevacs. This is not a larger push, but it feels like he has to scramble back as much. I think the plan almost always is to kind of lift and leave, and he's got units back at home to help out in case he does have to do a larger pullback. Widowmine shot here. We'll go into a few Balins to start, and Elazer is not stopping chasing. He's going to have units from the left-hand side as well. Clem is going to get a little surrounded because of it. Now he is kind of half lifting his units up, and these Hydras are just going to be left to do their own thing for a while.
Still, apparently, it's still going to happen the way that I didn't think it was, which is that Clem did have to retreat too much, and Elazer takes the opportunity to pounce. Clem is once again in a bit of trouble. He's got to stop these Balings from hitting his bio, which he does. Thankfully, they're kind of running in a line, but here's more, and he once again has to run away to the safety of that tank, but, safe is a very relative term. He's still losing his natural. He's losing some access to his third base, and he certainly has lost all of the momentum, so even though Elazer will not get the kill right here, right now, he has opened up that opportunity that he was looking for. I just didn't think it was going to happen. Again, I basically keep overestimating Clem.
Yes, no, I mean, it just felt as though this game, it's so similar to the last, and it's almost like, well, we thought Clem would kind of, figure it out a little bit more and, respond a bit better, but maybe he's just a little bit lost as to what to do when the Zerg is just going to attack you at this kind of a bit off timing, right? Still super lair focused and just a lot of units. Obviously, once Elazer gets rid of that first round of SCVs, it makes it so much tougher for Clem to stay in and rebuild up every time. And if Elazer can keep momentum in his favor, then he can do very well. This time, he might be pushed back for a few moments. He's got a lot more Lings on the way, though. He has had Clem slow down heavily. There's still Lings actually picking away at a CC on the south side. Clem needs to get to that and just make sure we don't lose it unnecessarily. It is starting to burn down. He just lifted as Elazer is going to whoop in his Banelings in a second to go once again.
And I do want to give a nod to the burrow. The fast burrow is pretty cool. I think people appreciate Elazer, even solely for that, and that's fair. He's one of the few that gets it. So, and burrow Banelings haven't really played a huge part, but just overall, the aggressive nature of Elazer, I think you're right, is catching Clem off guard. He was microing on that right side there when he absolutely needed to. That base did get shot down by the Hydras, and Elazer takes a 2-0 lead in his EVT against Clem. This wasn't supposed to happen this way, Wardy. This is the Twilight Zone. This is the Upside Down. What's going on here?
This is Twilight Sparkles, EG. We've moved from Starlight Twinkle mode to Twilight Sparkle. Yeah, no, I'm genuinely shocked. Like, I think second game in a row, it just being the exact same thing happening is, like, leaving me a bit baffled because I'm like, the reason it's like, if this was a Elazer versus like a different Terran player, someone like, say like a Milky Cow or someone, or just someone a little bit weaker, maybe even like a Spirit, right? Where it's like, okay, that wouldn't be too crazy, but to me, Clem losing in the same way twice just because we hold Clem on such a high pedestal in this European scene, especially in the European regionals, especially in TVZ, where he has repeatedly beaten Serral and Raynor to win these championships. It's just like, we don't expect him to lose twice to kind of something that's so kind of weird, and maybe it is the weirdness of it from Elazer that's kind of catching Clem off guard. Like, it doesn't feel like Clem knows what to do against someone that just lair tech, Lingbane Hydra masses him and just eventually rolls at him, because I thought he was honestly making decent adjustments. Like, it was very similar, and he didn't go for the larger move out. But then he had, like, units that just weren't really there for the big fight, and Elazer ends up surrounding and catching Clem kind of off guard again, even though Clem saw it come in from almost a mile away. That's wild.
Right, yeah. It is wild, because I also wouldn't say it's so random. Everyone would be confused. Yes, it is a different way of playing, and if Clem has only optimized his TVZ against the pacing of a Serral or a Lambo, I could see him being thrown off, but it's not the weirdest thing in the world. Usually, it does come down to the Terran kind of recognizing that is the intent. Scan the hive. Oh, there's no hive. Okay, I know he's going to be aggressive. It's not out of the realms of possibility for most Zerg players to bring this out every once in a while, and yet Clem looks as if he's learning about it for the first time.
Yeah.
And I just chalk that up to the fact that Elazer is more dedicated than most. Most would say, oh, I eventually have to go into hive. And Clem just thinks that's going to happen, and then it doesn't. I do want to emphasize how one-sided this was supposed to be. In the last year, Clem has won 20 games to Elazer's 2 in all of the matches as well. So Elazer has not won against this guy in a year, hardly won any games against him in a full year, and is now 2-0 ahead.
That's
what?
baffling, right? What do you change as Clem then? Going into game 3, what do we actually need to fix? Do we keep building tanks? Is that the answer at the moment? Because I feel like more tanks would definitely be nice. But then again, it's not like the Widow Mines aren't doing anything. Like, the Widow Mines have had some ridiculously good shots leading up to these fights that are then just, like, blowing Clem away. So what's the change? What do we do to fix this?
Well, I think I actually wonder. So Clem is kind of defaulting to this. I'm going to go up to 4 or 5 bases and then do double drops, or actually triple triple drops. And that's usually okay, because I think that's what we kind of expect for a later stage TVZ, is that, you know, double while you build up your defenses and the Zerg player tries to overwhelm you. I do wonder if instead of doing that, Clem actually, you know, still goes 4 bases. I think that's okay. But then does an actual push, you know what I mean? Like everything together with maybe, yes, more tanks. And then that's going to be a little more difficult. I mean, Elazer could still respond to that by doing maybe more run buys and really trying to buy time. I'm not saying that's going to be the silver bullet, but it would be a dramatic change of pace that might be better against someone who is looking for openings. Because when you do those drops, if you do mess up, if you do have to pick up, that creates an opening. You do a big main push, it's kind of breathing down your neck the entire time, right? I don't know.
Yeah. Just put some more pressure on Elazer, force him to kind of fight. Yeah. I mean, I'd be down for that, absolutely. I think that can work. Even if Elazer's being aggressive, because with enough tanks, it doesn't matter how aggressive Elazer wants to be, or how, like, there's a point at which, like, you just need more tech to deal with a certain amount of tanks, and I feel like that's maybe the one thing that I feel like Clem isn't utilizing, but yeah, just Elazer hitting with timings and fights that are just catching Clem off guard. We'll see what happens going into Grezvan for game number 3. Time for Clem to try and bounce back, otherwise Elazer is going to move on into those semi-finals. And, of course, CG, we didn't really talk too much about this, but top 4 in Europe gets that kind of seed into the offline finals, right? So that's a big event in Sweden next month. If you get top 4, you get flown out there, you get your hotel paid for, you get a seed into a deeper stage of the tournament straight away. And that, of course, is a massive benefit, and one which we expect Clem to usually claim out of Europe, and which right now Elazer is looking to take away from him.
It's gonna be really bizarre. I'll talk more about that after the intros. Down 0-2. The top left of Grezvan, he is Clem.
In the bottom right, a map away from semi-finals, it is Elazer.
It is just bonkers. Clem having won every single series, almost every single game against Elazer in an entire year. Clem, whose TVZ win record is absolutely insane. Clem, who has been by far the most championed of the European regionals. He has the most championships. And who usually only falters against some of the top tier names. Not that Elazer is not top 4, he is. But I mean, Clem usually only falls to those top 2, Raynor and Serral. And then the drop-off from that point for his TVZ is pretty large. Like, he can struggle against those 2 on some bad days, but then he almost always wins against the next 2 Zergs. Everything screams Clem's supposed to win this. the history of the tournament, the history of these two particular players, the fact that Elazer is actually taking more of like a chilled approach to StarCraft, where I believe Clem's playing as much as ever.
Mm-hmm.
And yet
Yeah.
here we are, 0-2, Elazer with the ball in his court. You know, he can do whatever he wants now to try and just get that one more victory.
Yeah, no, it's I really feel like once you get 2-0 up here as well, Elazer can just do a few. I mean, obviously, maybe keep doing what you're doing because it's working so well, but you have that bit of freedom to kind of throw in something a bit more aggressive, and then Clem's got to be a bit more cautious about just playing 3CC. You know, like, I just looked through Clem's results recently as well, just to have a, like, is Clem struggling maybe a bit more than usual? And honestly, no, like, his results have been really freaking good as of late, just taking down, players like Dark, and actually, just winning, like, big online cups. Like, his history looks great. Like, he's winning Open Cups week after week as well. Like, there's a lot of wins in there, and when he's losing, it's to players like Hero, and he took a map in a best of 3, like... It's not like Clem is off his game in general. It's not like he's, like, putting in a weaker performance. More like, oh, well, he's just off this week or this month or whatever. Like, he's been good. But, now this second series in a row, TVZ, first versus Wayne, and now versus Elazer, it just doesn't look like it's clicking for him.
Which is really weird, because TVZ has clicked for him by far the longest of all the matchups. We've seen him falter, very much look lost in TVP, a few years ago at this point, of course. TVT as well, he used to really struggle, and then at some point he kind of figured it out in his brain. Now he defeats most of the other Terrans, but TVZ was never a question. TVZ maybe would go between being his dominant, like 100% win rate to 80% win rate or something, but it would never change that much. But now today it is looking like his weakest matchup. Like he can't actually figure out what he's supposed to do. It's a very odd feeling, but Elazer, more power to him for what's working and continuing to do what's working. The aggressive nature really clearly throwing Clem off. So why stop? He's not going to try and throw in an all-in, even though Clem is once again 3CCing. Elazer is going to use Gressvon to once again get set up on 5 bases and then just Ling Hydra until Clem mistakes a move out for a good idea and then collapse in on him.
What if we just keep the Hellions alive and then we hit like a nice little, first Marines have Hellbats with them and we kind of just start pressuring a bit more from there? Because both games, the Hellions have been kind of lackluster early game. They killed a lot of Lings last time, but like, they die early. It just feels as though then Elazer gets a good bit of control, and then Clem spends so much time trying to basically take the kind of the creep spread away that he doesn't get to do much else, so... Yeah, maybe something there as well. I mean, just kind of like, so many possibilities, like, flitting through my head is like, what does Clem need to change? Because, like I say, it's kind of an unusual place to be in. We do have the Banshee and Cloak coming up. It's not the first time we've seen that in this series, as we do have the Hellions down through the center, just going for a poke around. Queens are in position, and we have a few more Lings on the way out as well, so Elazer really ready to just make sure these Hellions will not go anywhere. The lair kicks in at the same time as previously. This part all looks very similar.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it. I'd say if this was going a little bit more back and forth, either in the games themselves or obviously in the score line, Elazer might want to experiment with something else, but really, if it's working out, it's working out. So, and if Clem's also going to play very similar, then it's probably going to work out again, That's the simplest way to put it. Clem does what he does for the last 3 games. He's losing the last few games. So the onus is actually on Clem. It really is. Elazer probably more than happy that this is signaling that same type of longer game where he can get up to Ling Hydra and then do what he does. So I don't know if Clem's going to change it up with like an 8 racks, because that would be the only thing that would change at this point. But I'm feeling the 4th base, quick build up to the macro game, use the Banshees to help out with the run-by defense. It started off so beautifully in game number 1. It just didn't go anywhere afterwards.
Yeah, no, it's very true. There's a couple of Banshees just chilling over here, and took a couple shots. Hellions much more passive this game in terms of not diving by anywhere. Clem starts both of his upgrades exactly on time. That's also the first time that's happened this series, right? He's always been slow on one of them, so... So looking a little sharper just to start things out, but obviously nothing too game deciding just yet. He will get in for some drones. The Banshees is doing what Banshees do best, which is just find a corner. And even though there's defense in position, they can still get some damage done before they get cleaned up. And gonna come in from the high ground to get a couple more.
Now they're playing With fire. Yep. Those queens
Overseer?
actually arrived.
Oh my goodness.
Whew. Two Banshees gonna get repaired up and again help out with those run-bys in the future, so that's nice. Hellion's cleaning up some creep spread while those queens were distracted is also nice, and they're not looking to sacrifice themselves, which does mean, you know, and this hasn't happened, even though I kind of said, oh, it's not that important. This does mean that the Hellions can now be added as Hellbats with the first attack. So, I mean, that's literally just going to change the pacing of the game a little bit, and hopefully that means change the outcome of the game. Not that I'm saying that Clem has to win one or else the world is just not going to feel right, but he's got to look better in one. So hopefully this is it.
Yep, just going to have a few Marines coming forward. Widow Mines? Well, one of them goes down straight away. Hallion's going to move up, and we are going to grab ourselves a Queen. Two more Lings going down. Bane's taking damage. Scan will come in as well as we knock down a whole bunch of additional creep tumors. And Clem's supply just a little bit ahead. I mean, this is sometimes what happens when Clem can just do a good job of keeping his units alive. I mean, look at resources lost, 1,300 to 100. And he's just carved up a 10 army, 10 supply lead in the game. He's got 1-1 ahead of his opponent as well. 2-2 can start now as well once he gets the gas. This just feels like he's gone Clem mode, like he did in Game 5 versus Wayne. He's doing it here in Game 3 versus Elazer. Everything's so clean. It's obviously not a win game or anything yet, but it's just looking a lot better across the board to start. And there's a little run by. Didn't do much. Maybe the biggest win was catching a few Marines that were distracted while the run by hit.
Clem also choosing to go right into those Widow Mines, something that he's been hesitant to do in the previous games, and that have, you know, the decision going to tanks and keeping them at home has taken away power from his offensive opportunities. Now, this is the fast and fierce Clem, Hellbats, and lots of Widow Mines included, and of course trying to abuse this position on Gressvon. Elazer does seem to be ready for this particular attack, though, is going to clean things up. The Banshees even having Queens underneath them to take care of them, and Elazer will have some room to breathe as this drop also is forced to pick up. This is, I think, a little more tight. This is the back and forth, very, you know, the high speed pacing we would hope from both players, and Elazer should have thus a more difficult time getting, I think, into the number of Hydras that he wants, getting into the aggressive nature that he wants. As long as Clem, you know, keeps up on his aggression, doesn't make any fatal mistakes, Widow Mines hopefully work in his favor, all that good stuff. And that one was pretty decent.
Yeah, that was a nice shot right there. Yeah, just Clem definitely pushing Elazer a little bit more consistently rather than... It just feels a bit scary for Elazer, whereas in the past games it was like, okay, Clem's getting some creep and, you know, he's being, you know, forced back here and there, but it wasn't that impactful. This game, it feels like Elazer's like a slightly bad fight away from maybe losing a base or losing a mineral line, so... Clem just able to get much closer to the bases too. The creep spread isn't as far out, and we're going to reset it in the center once again here. That's one thing he did quite nicely on the top right side. The creep's being killed there a couple times, so there's not a lot of creep in front of that forward base. Elazer lines up a Ling counterattack, but maybe it turns into a Ling surround as he can bring it back to help deal with this advance of Marines that will head to this forward base right now.
We would have got it down. Banelings are a little too close, but that is an injured base at this point. Elazer does have the Banelings looking to roll on by. He'll have Burrow as well soon, so that might play a factor in these run-bys. Good last-second split, but Clem's army is responding. Elazer chases the Medivac army all the way back home, but this time around not going to be able to continue with that momentum. Widow Mine drop comes in, kills 14 drones, forces some of the army to return to clean that up, and when the army of the Zerg goes back home, Clem moves out on the map.
Yep. Just really kind of pacing the game himself here and just keeping it active and moving forward with a much more kind of, you know, joined up set of units this time. Just straight through the center, not kind of going two different directions or anything. And for the moment, pushing himself into better and better position as even more creep gets denied. And he's not going too deep in one location either. He's aware of the potential surrounds, so he's moving up to the top now. That kind of forces this army of Elazer to reposition a little bit. And like I say, not letting himself kind of get surrounded into a bad spot or anything. Staying pretty pre-split. Let's see what Elazer wants to do to deal with this. He is maxed out, about to finish up his +2 carapace. That will help him out a little bit in these fights. We're going to dive forward right now. Some of these Banes get forward. Widow Mine's off on the Overseers.
Well, one of them was in the heart of the Zerg army at the very least, and that was enough. The Ling run by once again, not finding the damage with the combined efforts of the wall, buying time, and the attack also being relatively close, right, to help defend. That's not always going to be the case. Sometimes Clem will be too deep to help his home, but With the 4th base saturated, 5th base on the way, 6th base too, he could probably lose some of the SCVs and not be too much worse off for it as long as he controls the center of the map, make sure never to be found picking up and leaving and being totally vulnerable. Once again, Elazer is looking for that opportunity, but it is so different. Just literally the fact that Clem is stutter stepping backwards as opposed to dropping back at home is so different when it comes to stopping Elazer's momentum.
Finding some kills on the Banshees as well as they get to swoop in from the right-hand side, and Clem is just picking up kills all over the place, and he's now up to about a 20 supply lead. Elazer's bank is drained of gas. It's mostly just minerals left over, and just a very convincing game so far from Clem. I'm very, very careful about what I say because I have been a big believer of Clem in this series so far, and obviously it's been moments where it's all turned wrong for him, but this has absolutely been the most hopeful game we've seen of him. It's going very differently. The pacing just in general is very different, and it definitely feels much more like Elazer is kind of scrapping for his life than just sort of defending here and there and then getting a major push off. It's always been about what Clem wants to do so far.
It feels like both players are playing at some of their most optimal, is what's finally happening. Like, Elazer was playing great, but I don't think we saw anything that was screaming best Zerg ever 2023. It was Clem who was playing a little bit worse. Now that Clem is playing, I think, up to the speed that we expect for him, now we can say Elazer, great job keeping up, right? Because that seriously deserves some praise when Clem is playing at some of his finest TVZ. If Elazer can keep up, and if Elazer can still win, even after this game, that is a testament to his strength right now in the matchup. He's going to find a couple of bailing connections, but maybe not enough. Still going to continue on with this. Widowmine's Burrow gets lots of shots off, but the Widowmines do sacrifice themselves. But most importantly, they allowed the army to escape and unload from those medevacs.
Yes, they got away safely, and good target fire from Clem at one point as well, getting rid of the couple extra Banes to make sure that army could stand and fight for a little while longer. Another Widowmine just going to hit big on the Lings. The Banes will continue through, though. Looks like Elazer really wants to find something from this. He is killing SCVs up to the north side as well, so some multi-prong here, but I feel like Clem has enough to eventually just clean this out. Like, yes, you lose some SCVs, but he's losing so much army is Elazer, and that's going to leave Clem in a fantastic spot behind this. I was going to say a good thing for Elazer was that he's done a really good job obviously getting bases up and, you know, replacing a lot of the creep that's been denied multiple times. But these fights that keep happening just off of creep spread a bit more to the middle of the map have constantly been all about Clem. He's been able to shut down banelings, not let them get any decent connections, and like you say, just a different tempo to the fights as well, where he's not picking up and running away like, oh crap, I'm in trouble. Much more like, oh, okay, you're coming in now, I'm going to start stepping back, get value out of all these units as they retreat. And they just get back into position in a much better manner than they were doing in the previous games.
Simply put, he looks in control, as opposed to letting the control slip almost easily in the last 2 games. When you compare it to this one, it felt like it was easy for Elazer. Elazer now very much so struggling to find Clem truly shocked, truly caught off guard, and truly playing under his usual skill. Now this is exactly the Clem we expect. He's looking for the killing blow. A lot of these snipes going to kill the remaining Hydras, and Elazer is not going to get that coveted 3-0, but he still has room to play, and he could still change things up, right? But yes, this one is Clem's.
This one is absolutely Clem's as he finally puts himself onto the scoreboard. He will not let himself get swept. He will fight back. And, yeah, I honestly just have very similar things to say as what I said the other day when it was like Clem Wayne. It was like, at some point Clem just clicked into like Clem mode a bit more, and then it was very convincing. And I would say this game was very convincing. Did he like roll over Elazer in like, you know, 6-7 minutes? No. But he controlled every portion of the game. There wasn't really a point where Elazer looked, you know, control, and there wasn't a point where it's like, oh my god, Clem's scrapping around trying to survive. It always felt as though Clem knew what was going to happen next. The fights were where he wanted them to be. There was a run by, boom, units in position, rest of the army gets back there to help defend. He was just controlling the game start to finish, and that was obviously a very good thing to see if you are a Clem fan, because it looked a lot more like Clem playing than in the previous 2 games.
Yes. And now, honestly, it's just so much easier to get excited for when Elazer does go toe-to-toe with him.
Yes.
Like, I know this is kind of the same situation. It's almost very much the same situation as Clem Wayne, where I guess people expected y'all to get really hype about Wayne. And it's, like, good to give credit to someone who's playing well if someone else isn't playing well. But to avoid the conversation of the not playing well character altogether, I mean, that'd just be... that just wouldn't be right. Right? So it's like, well, now if Clem's playing 100% and Elazer's playing 100%, we get the best games possible. We get to praise Elazer for matching the skill of, you know, one of the world's best TVZers. as opposed to just scratching your head wondering, okay, where is Clem? When's he going to show up? So I'm personally a lot more excited for the remaining games.
Yeah.
Whether Elazer wins or loses or Clem wins or loses, I'm just more excited because I think there's going to be a lot more back and forth. I think there's going to be a little bit more of the strategy coming involved as well. Clem finally gets a victory looking as clean as he did, but also playing a bit more greedy, not getting those tanks. Maybe this is when Elazer brings out an all-in or goes for roaches and punishes Clem for that, as opposed to, well, Elazer continues doing his thing and winning, so, great. There's going to be some strategy here, I think.
Well, in the bottom right-hand corner, our red Terran player from Team Liquid, it is Clem.
In the top left, also for Team Liquid, he is Elazer.
Dragon Scales was, for a long time, a map, actually, which I really kind of loved as a Terran player, and I don't really think that changed. Just interesting to see this pop up as map 4 of the series. So, yeah, I mean, I think back to like a month and a half ago when we did an event, and the players with the lower seed just got to pick map 1, no vetoes, and every Terran against Sarah was just like, Dragon Scales. And here we are. It's map 4 of the series, which is Elazer's map pick, so he prefers this over map 5, whatever map 5 is. And he didn't veto it as well, so he chose to veto something else along the way here, and just find that kind of interesting, ZG, because now I'm like, man, does Clem just have all his good maps kind of coming up towards the end here, and is that going to be his powerhouse move? Because, yeah, Dragon Scales, typically good for Terran, good ledges, good push positions, short, all the things you like.
Yeah. That's a very good point. If this is going to go down to the wire, the maps will certainly influence it. But if this ends up being a Elazer, just a scenario, not saying this is going to happen, but if Clem skips tanks, Elazer goes for roaches, the map might not matter, right? So there's like a tier as to what's going to matter, and then maybe on the lowest tier is does the map play too big of a part? And I think if it is going to be like the last game, if Elazer really does just play once again into Ling Bangling Hydra on 4 or 5 bases, Clem goes for a 3cc, then the map kind of gets bumped up. Like, okay, now the map's really important, and Elazer's going to have some trouble.
Yes. You have to, there's definitely benefits to this map for the Zerg if you want to be aggressive. Shortness obviously helps with roach styles, so that's a factor too. We'll see what Elazer does, because, so far he's been kind of just repeating his game, right? Kind of saying, it worked in game 1, it worked in game 2, but now it hasn't worked in game 3, so do we try something different? Do we go more aggressive? Do we kind of really switch it up and try and catch Clem off guard with a different kind of style? It would actually like it, right? Because I feel like doing the same thing repeatedly is definitely one way to just let Clem now feel kind of in his comfort zone. He's had a game where he's won against it, and so I would like to see Elazer mix it up a little bit, as Clem is still waiting to just put down his 3rd CC in a couple of moments' time.
And here's the thing about mixing it up. You might get a victory right off the bat in the game you mixed it up on. Fantastic, wonderful, 3-1, let's go. You might also unsettle Clem for game 5. And I think that's what you were kind of getting at, right? Making Clem kind of worry a little bit more. So if Clem wins this game against a surprise roach maneuver, he figures it out and he does well against it, he now has to maybe build those tanks, which we know was kind of offsetting his aggression in the early game in game 1 and 2. So I think there's a lot of value in changing things up for Elazer, whether or not he literally wins from the game he changes it up.
Yes. No, it's all very good points. Clem, Starport, second gas. Reaper just dancing around with the first couple of queens. Takes a bit too many shots, so we'll not be able to contest the first Cryptium on the low ground. And we'll just try and stay active as long as possible. And yeah, we'll see the Starport finishing, and we'll see if it wants to swap over to the Tech Lab. It does. It's likely just a Hellion Banshee-based opener, and we pop on along from there. Obviously, very safe way to open. If Clem really believes it's a good map for him, obviously if you just open Hellion Banshee safely, generally that trends towards you getting to the point where you want to be at in the game, or where the map then will generally benefit you. So what he's doing makes sense, as he might catch a drone. He does.
Is he gonna get punished for it? Nah, 2 Hellion's still alive. But right, this is the nicest way to play out the early stages, the safest way. Elazer still has time to change things up, but the current trajectory is, in fact, him going into those Ling Bangling Hydras, as you do not see any type of sneaky Roach Warren placed on the backside of the mineral line, for instance, which I personally would be appreciating that. To go into 1-1 Roach all-in, that is. Obviously, don't do Roaches right now, as Banshees would immediately counter them. But the later on, attack could still be something, but no, all of Elazer's build is similar to the last 3 games.
Yep. There's been no change up from him at all just yet, so see if that does change at all. Obviously, Clem was pretty good with the Banshees last time too. Got in for like 6-7 workers and then kept those Banshees alive for a long time as well. One of the things I always praise about Clem in TVZ is usually his unit retention. Definitely wasn't the case in the first couple of games of this series, but you know, seeing his Banshees survive to a much later point and getting them to come out and, you know, being able to use them to, like, hit down a couple Banes that are running around, deny a hatchery later on, just add some DPS to an army, even defend run-bys. It's the kind of thing that can be very powerful as well, so we'll see if he can succeed with the Banshees. We do have double Engineering Bay, the Baneling Nest on the way to tie up with the Lair, and we really are just getting just very similar openings on repeat here.
I still stand by my argument that, like, you know, it could have been nice to do something different, but just to be clear, because he lost 1 game with it doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. I would be terrified of going up against Clem, who seemingly is in the zone with the same thing, you know, because I think that would, like, Elazer must have felt the difference too, right? Between the games. It's not so much that there is a huge strategy change from Clem that forced him to look better or worse. There was also just, there was a little bit with, like, again, the tanks and whatnot, but it was also just not quite feeling like Clem. So now you are going into a more, I don't know, you're going into Ling Baneling Hydra, which I would usually say Clem is very happy to play against. And now that it seems like Clem is at 100% again, I'm going to say it, he probably will be excited to face this. He did go for 1 safety tank, but okay, he's gonna go for 2. He could swap off afterwards, so he is still respecting the idea of a change-up. But this is actually proof, in fact. So now we have a game that looks like game 1 or 2 where the tanks did come out. He can't be as early aggressive. Was that the secret to Elazer winning, or was it Clem just really also playing off? Because I'm leaning towards the latter, but we kind of get our proof here.
What if we keep building tanks this time? Like, do we like that?
I actually really would like that.
Yeah, I think so too. Especially this map, out of all the maps, there's so many ledges, there's so many positions tanks can sit behind or up on top of and really, you know, be abusive, you know, defensively and offensively. So, yeah, we already see a Widowmine on the way out of the Tech Lab factory though, so it looks as though we're not going to get it. We have a couple drones going down as Hellions poke into the upper right, and again, just Clem taking it slow and steady. Taking his fights much more cautiously than we've seen previously. We get in here for a couple of creep tumors, now going to jump on towards some queens as well.
It's pretty unfortunate that Elazer's build seems to always have this macro problem. 1,500 minerals in the bank.
Yeah.
Probably feel a lot more comfortable and maybe able to do more things too if that wasn't happening, because even though it's consistent, it can't be a good thing.
No. And generally, you're meant to spend your money. I mean, 1,500 minerals have lings on the map, being active, you know, threaten a counterattack or something. I mean, might not work, but even having a threat is something to take Clem's attention away. The Hellions morph into Hellbats and trade on the right side. They will win the fight and force an extra round of Banelings to connect, which is very efficient of them. And now Clem pushing up the left side as well, ZG. So you asked about, you know, tanks. Do they slow Clem down too much? Well, right now, honestly, it doesn't seem like it. He is going full swinging on the left-hand side, and definitely seems like he has enough to kind of put up a fight. He has let Elazer catch up in upgrades. His own 2-2 very slow to start, as we do lose a medevac on the left side as well. So those are a couple of things to note. Elazer giving up some overlords as well, though. And it does feel like Clem just maintaining the lead. If he can get a bigger push going in the near future on a shorter map like this, I think he's got a lot of potential still. Here comes a bigger fight from Elazer, Ling Bane to clean up this middle of the map drop.
Don't forget that a short map kind of in general also favors the momentum, right? So I agree that, like, it's still a good Terran map, and the shortness of the distance can usually favor the Terran, but it also means whoever gets momentum usually keeps it. So on Submarine, you know, Zergs were correctly terrified to play on it, but if they did get a good fight, it was really hard for the Terrans to build enough units to defend in time. So I'm very much keeping that in mind as we watch Elazer go for the style that seemingly is looking for that moment where Clem has to retreat and Elazer can break out. So just something to think about. If the engagements do also happen, let's say right here, Elazer would be very close to counterattacking the fourth base.
It's a very good point. Just one of those things to keep in mind. Also worth knowing as well, it works. I mean, so many things about short maps, right? Because also the Terran can return home more easily too to deal with counterattacks as well. There's a lot going on. The Widowmines blew up an Overseer on the left side, so they take a little while to get cleaned up, but they will go down in the end. That's what Elazer's being kind of paying attention to. What Clem did get with the Banshees was some of the Queens that were going to replace creep spread, so he's really delayed the replacement of creep in the middle of the map, and just so much more constraint on Elazer's vision and just control of the map because of that creep spread being denied so much in this game. And that was true in the last game a lot more as well, so it's definitely one of the things that's improved massively as, again, Widowmines getting some reasonable shots to start off with. They're going to get more, as there's one still to go, and man, we're talking about 20 kill Widowmines here. Just so much being dealt. And Clem, still with an army in the top right as well. Elazer feels like he's constantly replacing these Zerglings.
Oh yeah, that he is. That he is. He's still looking for that really more convincing engagement where Clem clearly is just panicking and running home. Clem is doing the control thing like last game. He's never quite totally panicking. And as you pointed out, I mean, if he does return home, he might be getting there a little bit faster to actually unload more in a safe type of style, safe timing. I'm wondering if this is the moment. Elazer is posturing aggressively. Nah, he's not going to go for it.
No, he does not. He decides just to pull it back. Still just sitting on lair tech. That's why I felt worried from him in games 1 and 2, and then it turned out to be fine, so we'll see. I mean, he's waiting for that kind of bigger fight, that bigger opportunity. Widowmines like that are going to say he's not going to get it, though, as that's just expensive. Elazer has to dip into the bank again to replace 50 Zerglings immediately, and just so costly. And now you're going to lose the base on the left side, so you reset down to 4 bases again quickly. And Clem is just again controlling this game number 4.
Yeah, Lazer's gonna feel that. That's gonna hurt. Currently with a bit of a bank to fall back on, but absolutely needs to replace the base. It's technically being replaced up to the top right faster, so that might be where the drones go. But yeah, this game's nowhere near done, and you are not finding that one opportunity to do the counterattack to overwhelm the Terran. So losing bases, big problem. This base does get canceled. So still lacking that 5th, dropping the main base, looking for some damage. Elazer being pulled in 2 different directions constantly, and never really being 100% always in place. Gonna lose the spawning pool. Is gonna replace it at the very least as fast as possible, and with his maxed out situation, I don't think it's too bad. It looks like he was afraid the lair was gonna get sniped.
I was like, the new lair on the way, I feel like that was a little bit faithless in what you had going on. But yeah, you're right. Clem is just kind of forcing the Lasers to run here, then run there. He's constantly like a little bit behind in terms of what's happening, and that's just allowing Clem to get a lot done. Clem's finding so much value around the map, and obviously kind of when you get the momentum is kept very easily, like you say, and that's just going to be the case for the Terran player this time. The creep spread's so limited as well. It's hard to be kind of slowing the Terran down out in the middle of the map too, so yeah, Clem just gets into such a controlling spot. Medivacs in the back left are now going to go to the natural, and this is why I feel like Elazer's army isn't meant to win a fight even, because it's just not really good enough. It's like, you know, a group of Hydras, a group of Banes, and then like a lot of Lings. It's like, well, how is that meant to win a fight? Well, it did earlier. Banelight's now going to crash through all these Widowmines at least, so we get something out of this push.
Yeah, not bad. Oh, exactly right. This is direct comparison. This is what it's supposed to more so feel like compared to that game 2 or game 1. We're like, yeah, no, Elazer's not supposed to be winning a lot of these fights. Yeah, okay, so the world makes sense again. Elazer still has the opportunity to find one good fight. He still has the army that could do a counterattack, that could infiltrate Clem's production, and he is finally looking for it. Everything collapsing together, looking for this around, forcing the pickup on Clem's side of the map. This is the moment that Elazer has been looking for, that gave him the victories in game 1 and 2, and even actually entering into the natural is fantastic. Third base, a little awkward, but SimCity's helping out.
Yeah, SimCity helping out a lot. Some SCVs will be going down here. Clem trying to get tanks back in position. Extra Banes, I was going to say, we're really missing Banelings from this more than anything else, and they are now showing up. Can he keep on pushing forward on this third base? The Lings are just being left to kill every SCV in the natural. Clem has units there, but they're AFK, but what that means is that he's not reinforcing the third base at all, so the units that are over here are not getting any additional help. I mean, a couple libs show up. Now we get over here with the additional units. Clem will start to clean this up and push this back, but man, took a while, loses a lot of workers, and that's the kind of moment where Elazer has seen success off the back of in these earlier games. So we have it once again. This time, though, Clem moves forward afterwards. He's not in too much of a disarray, and that means he can maybe stop some of these Banes coming up, get some snipes off, and start finding some additional value that he didn't have before.
It's pretty important that his army is still sticking together. As soon as it's caught, two apart, that's when these Ling surrounds really become troublesome. This is all while Clem has 3-3 to Elazer's 2-2-2, by the way, and Elazer is still looking to try and win, but the supply really taking a turn for the worst in that fight, and Elazer needed to take a chill pill, and what he also needs is larva. Without those hatcheries up and running like they were supposed to be, 7 instead of 6, or 6 instead of 5, he just can't remax. That's it, man. The momentum's completely lost.
Yeah, he doesn't have anything at all. He's got a lot of minerals in the bank, but that doesn't translate anywhere. He had some really, I just want to point out, some sick splits when he was attacking in there with the Lings. I felt like the Widow Mines were about to be super decisive, and then they hit nothing. But obviously, it's not enough to turn this around, and we are going to end up going the full distance in this best of 5 quarterfinal matchup. We are going to go to the 5th and final game. And we're going to see if Clem can complete the reverse sweep or if Elazer can find that magic again. He's still doing the same thing, ZG, but Clem feels like he's got it way more figured out than ever before now.
Yes, I do believe he does. And then add on top of that, I think a still pretty important decision. Build tanks or go right into Widow Mines. Can also set Clem up for even more success. And the question would be, do you think Elazer is going to change it on the final game? Would he be so gutsy as to do that? I would say usually he is.
Yeah.
Usually. But he is literally playing the same thing every single time in this best of 5.
But now it hasn't worked twice. I was fine for him continuing it in Game 3 and even Game 4, honestly. Like, you still won 2 games off it, and they were very convincing games, and I think you could identify where Game 3 went a bit worse for you. But, like, surely now, 2 in a row, Clem's really showing a lot more prowess against this style. Surely now you try something a bit different. It's Neo-Humanity. I'm not sure if that really lends itself to something a bit wonkier here, perhaps, from Elazer, but I don't know, man. Like, I mean, I feel like if you do the same again, Clem's likely to do something very similar. He seems to be very on top of his Hellion movement. The Banshees have been very conservative but effective. And he's just pushing himself into a position and then not letting it slip. Like, every time Elazer gets on top of bases, Clem has such a better answer to what he had in those games 1 and 2, and that's really making the difference so far.
Yep. Now, the map change is going to be interesting, because I think Neo-Humanity does encourage more so big fights, big main fights, than little bits here and there. So, would that be better for Elazer style? No, right? I don't think so. But then does Clem play into that style, or does he say, forget the map, I don't care about it, let's continue keeping doing what I was doing, which is attacking in multiple places at once?
Yeah, I mean, this map obviously can... I say this map can probably split map much more easily than the previous ones, right? Like, we see that lane in the center can be very good to control, and the attacking pathways are very well defined. I'm trying to think what would be good for Elazer. I actually feel like this should be good for Clem. Like, I feel like Clem's issue a lot of the time is not just being forced to lift up, back away, and drop, but also, like, other units, like, somewhere else, and they have to join the fight a bit late. That especially happened on Ancient Cistern, I felt like. Feels like on this map that shouldn't really happen, so I don't know. I feel like this is decent for Clem. A lot of Zergs don't necessarily like playing Neo-Humanity. Terrans can get some good spots on this map as well, so I really think Elazer should switch it up, though. I think we've done the same build 4 games in a row. Clem is clearly now feeling comfortable about it. I think it's time to change. Let's see if he will. In the bottom right, our blue Zerg is going to be Elazer.
And in the top left for Team Liquid, he is the red Terran, Clem.
Well, then, final game of this series. The winner plays Serral in tomorrow's semifinals. Here's a question for you, ZG. Say, Clem comes out and gets the win here. How good do we feel for him taking on Serral when he's had games where he's looked shaky? It's got to be, a little bit concerning, considering that Serral is just on an absolute roll at the moment.
That is a good question. Yeah, Clem definitely, I don't know what's happening. I don't know if he's not warming up, guys. I know I'm saying that because he was a little bit late, but he might have been on a different account laddering for all I know. But there's definitely something that feels like you could blame on not warming up, because he loses these games and then looks better as the time goes on. We usually say that's a warm-up problem.
Yeah.
So if he can prepare a little bit better, do whatever he needs to do at his house to make sure that he's prepared, I think he'd be fine against Serral. There's also this weird thing where I feel like sometimes players who are dominating 3-0, 3-0, 2-0, 3-0 meet Serral, and then it's a brick wall. So, like, in the weirdest way, I feel like him struggling and have to really think about how to come back and how he needs to change things is almost priming himself better for facing Serral than if he was just like, la 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 la, TVZ, so easy, so easy.
I like the thought process of it. Yeah, no. You know, to be honest, I feel like in these European regionals, there's been times where Serral's looked unstoppable, and then Clem's just been like, actually, no, it's mine. But there's also been like a couple of times where Clem's TVZ has been like, oh my god, it's so good, and then Serral's like, actually, it's not. And then that was the one time Serral won. Because I remember, I think I was hosting for that because I was like, man, there's no way Clem can lose. Like, I know it's Serral, but he's playing so well. And then Serral like 4-1'd him and just made it look so easy. I was like, oh wow, like Serral just leveled up, and yeah, it'll always be very interesting, you know. Especially I feel like, I mean, you even see Clem changing throughout a series, never mind from one day to the next. So a lot to see there. Of course, if Elazer makes it there, could be a fun ZVZ. We saw Serral looking great in ZVZ against Lambo, but do you feel like Elazer has that kind of crazy edge that might be a bit better off to try and take a Serral down? He's obviously contested Serral a good amount himself in the past. Maybe not being super successful, but has had those series where games have gone, you know, his way, and it's gotten closer than people expected.
Well, I still think, I guess no matter which player advances, it's still kind of the best option against Serral. Clem does beat Serral more often than other people, and Serral does lose ZVZ more often than other matchups. But, you know, not to a huge degree on either one of those. He does actually win a lot versus Clem, and he wins a lot of ZVZs. So it's like the best option is still, you know, you're still facing Serral.
Isn't pretty.
Yeah. And we have been able to just hypothesize here, guys, because it's a 3CC build again from Clem. Into the safe Banshee follow-up, and then Elazer is going into 3 bases, which, you know, that's not surprising. It is the continued emphasis on droning and no technology and primarily Ling Baneling. If he adds Roach Warren, if he adds a Spire, you know, if he doesn't add a Hydralisk Den, all those things could still change up the way that this game plays. But right now, you know, he is doing Zerg things, and, you know, he should.
We are just going down the route and down the road we have gone down before. Honestly, I mean, TVZ is usually nowadays such a fun and interesting matchup for the first few minutes because there's a lot of different things you can do, right? And you can mix it up, and the Zerg has different openings, the Terran has a bunch of different ways to set up, and there's usually a lot of interactions, and this series is just sort of saying, like, nah, this is kind of just you go 3CC, build Hellion Banshee, we had Hellion Liberator one game, and the Zerg just builds a lair and goes Ling Bane Hydra, and we just kind of wait. Like, the biggest excitement was Clem threw his Hellions games 1 and 2, and now he stopped doing that. It's not a lot going on early game.
No, there is not. And Elazer, I mean, I guess Elazer can sometimes really not be cheesy. He is just more aggressive. And, you know, that's what's happening here. But I still expect some cheese in a best of 5. Especially as the Terran is known to prefer 3CC and occasionally does, you know, get away with the very unsafe 3CC, the non-Banshee version. So I would have expected at least once, but perhaps it would have happened if Elazer didn't win the first 2 series, first 2 games in a weird twist like that. But it is exactly like the last game so far.
Yeah, really is. Factory moves over, tank time. Got a couple of those up and running. You know, for how much we've talked about these tanks, it's kind of funny how little we've really seen them in play. I feel like, you know, we mentioned the 2 tanks last time, and then at some point they sieged up from the right-hand side. They came over to the left to help defend the 3rd, and that's like the only thing I remember of them. They've just been such a non-factor throughout this series, actually. It's been kind of incredible. Aspire.
Darn it, Wardy.
We mixed it up.
You know, I was literally going to bring up how Aspire can sometimes be played on Neo-Humanity if you assume your opponent is going to play into like 3, probably 4 bases. And then I was like, but I keep saying it never happens. So I didn't say it.
You did the caster
Darn
thing.
Yeah. Well, I do like this a lot. I like it because it's different. I also like it because I do think you are going to get the room to play with the Spire against what Clem has been showing and on this map. So now, does that mean the Spire wins? No. As far as a tool here, it's going to be allowed to be used. Is it going to win the game? That's a question mark. But it really will change the pacing of it. And if Clem's finally going to do a tank move out, it's going to be so funny. He's like, yeah, you know what? I'll probably bring these tanks with me. That sounds like a good idea. And then, like, a Muta kills it, and he's like, oh, wait, what?
The one game he doesn't switch to Widowmine is just like, Mutalisk! It's like, no! He doesn't have the information. He is actually moving out. Spire is done, but we've not made any Mutas yet. Elazer stacking up the money, starts 8. That means he doesn't have money for Banelings. If Clem moves on to creep a little bit here and gets a bit aggro, actually could be quite good for him, because if there's no Banes, it's typically good. We are going to set the tank up to support a little bit across the edge. Just about reaches over slightly, so yeah, it covers a little bit of space, and the Marines get a chance to move forward. The Hellions get parked on the siege tank as well, so that's safe from a counterattack. Clem being way more aggressive with that tank than we've seen in previous games, but like you say, Mutas are about to pop out, and that's scary, because if you do force this army to lift up into Medivacs, and then the Mutas dive, that can be really, really bad for you. The few Mutas, 3 of them, not very scary, but they will slowly go for the tank. They have to back away. They have to respect the position is great for Clem. The Marines are going to get rid of all of the Lings. 1-1 is in play, and, well, Elazer misread that one.
That was unfortunate. Very unfortunate. Elazer, I think, got too excited.
Yeah, he went too soon. 100%.
Yeah, way too soon. He should have waited for more Mutas, emphasized the tank kill before collapsing in with the Lings. Now he might be screwed, dude.
He has no Banes. Like, he still hasn't morphed Banelings in.
Yeah, he is screwed.
Yeah, I mean, this is just... You literally have no reason not to just click forward here as Clem. Maybe this is why Elazer didn't change it up all series.